Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast, brought to you by Strata. I'm your host, Griffin Hamilton. This is the show where I interview industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights into modern-day facilities management. From hospitality to commercial real estate and everything in between, we'll learn what it really takes to succeed as a facilities manager. Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Today, I've got Giselle Holder with me. Giselle, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've gone back and forth a couple of times, and we've been planning this for a couple of weeks, so I'm really looking forward to diving in here. And so to really kick us off, just tell us more about who you are personally, and we'll dive into the professional stuff here in a bit, but give us a little bit more of who you are.
Sure, thanks for that. Well, as you said, I'm Giselle, and I live, breathe, do everything in Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. We're actually very close to Venezuela, but we speak English, as you can tell. So I'm a facility manager. I'm an aunt of 3 nieces, and I'm just really passionate about facility management. So really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see that you were awarded from IFMA the 40 under 40. Is that right?
Yeah, that was kind of cool and unexpected. It also just gives an indication of my age, which isn't a bad thing. But yeah, that was really, really cool, and very humbling as well to receive that honor.
Yeah, and I'm not too familiar with that award. Obviously, 40 under 40, top 40. Mm-hmm. Do they have different criteria or different categories within that award?
Well, actually, not to sound like I'm boasting, but it was actually very special because this was the first year they put it on because they were celebrating their 40th anniversary. So for them, it's I would think once in a lifetime. I'm not sure if they're going to keep up some sort of young professional focus. So because there are other awards that IFMA does every year through their Awards of Excellence program. But this one was put on specifically to commemorate their 40th anniversary as an organization. So, and it was this application process where persons nominated others, and then IFMA selected, and it's supposed to be global. It was global, and they selected. It was 2 Trinidadians, myself and Tyrell, and then of course many other young professionals throughout the world.
That is awesome. How did you get notified that you were even nominated, let alone winning?
Well, I thought it was spam when I got it. Oh my goodness, because that was in the midst of the whole lockdown throughout the world with COVID-19, and everything was virtual, and you're bombarded with even more emails than normal. And this email came in with, "You're a winner," and I'm like, what is this? But no, in reading, it was very cool because they had follow-up sessions with us. And so there were 40 winners. They put us first as finalists, and then they came back and said you are winners. Because that was a little bit confusing too, because do we have to do something more? But then they did explain that it's 40 winners for them to commemorate this, the IFMA 40 under 40. And they did special features on us within the IFMA Facility Management Journal and other things through their social media.
That is too cool. Yeah. And getting into the industry, and we're going to dive into this here in a bit, but it's odd with women being in the industry as of right now, which hopefully in the very near future, we're going to see a change in that. But what drew you to facilities management? How did you get exposed to it? And what made you so passionate about facilities management?
Yeah, I think my story is very similar to many other persons in facility management in that we fall into it. Unfortunately, a lot of people right now practicing facility management. It was not a planned career, right? So I started my journey through engineering. I did electrical and computer engineering. And then from that, I went into project management and construction. So that's kind of where I started off. And within the same company, we saw the connections between construction and facility management in terms of that whole handover. And because there were always clients coming back to us about, they want to know more about the building and all these things. So there was this natural synergy for us that we saw between the two professions. So my team, which was a team focused really on renovation type projects within project management, outfitting projects, those sort of things, we were then transitioned into what would then become our facility management consultancy company. And over time too, I would then become the director of facility management of that. So as I said, it wasn't so much of a planned thing. Unfortunately, I didn't leave high school thinking, yes, I'm going to be a facility manager. But, certainly the foundation of engineering to me was ideal for it. And you're so right, because I moved from one profession, which is electrical and computer engineering, which is actually very male dominated, to another profession that is heavily male dominated.
You can't get away.
I just couldn't. I just kept making these choices, right? But it's good because it means there's so much opportunity to grow, so much opportunity to share. And I think that's one of the things I really like about it, that there's so much more we still have to do. And to be part of that journey on a local level, on a regional level, on an international level is really exciting to me.
Yeah. And you mentioned falling into it or not being intentional from the get-go, having that dream of being a facilities manager. Yet you also did get your master's in facilities management, correct?
Yes. So I'm someone, I don't do things halfway. So when our team was, more or less groomed to take on facility management consultancy type projects, at that time, I was just a few years out of university, having finished my first degree. Because for me too, another thing that's a little bit odd, but that I really like, is that I've had one job in terms of one company for my whole life, right? From graduation in university, I've worked in the same company. But the reason I've stayed is because, I've gone through different positions, through different fields within the same company. So it feels like different jobs over the years. And part of that too was, just understanding, what facility management is. And I really wanted to do a deeper dive into it. And I felt like, okay, I'm serious about this, let's do this. So let's do our master's. And I made a decision. I used IFMA to help me search to narrow down on programs, because unfortunately, locally, we don't have any programs in facility management on that level. So that was a great help, and met some really wonderful people along the way, and did my master's completely virtual back then, and no regrets at all.
That's area. And how do you think that having your master's really prepared you beyond that? What really was the change that you saw in yourself, other than the obvious of having a formal education in it?
Sure.
But talk more about that. What was the big difference before and after the master's?
Yeah, I think personally, the master's was a wake up call to me in terms of, this is serious. I'm making a commitment, because it was not cheap, right? So by saying yes to that, and the 2 years of additional, you're working and studying and all that, that whole journey, really opened up my eyes to what facility management could offer. And it actually helped me be more certain in terms of, yes, this is what I want to do for the next 10, 15, 20 years. I'm confident in that. And, it's before, I guess for me, it was more of we're trying this out. I'm not too certain, about what to expect. We also were very fortunate in terms of the company I work with to have partnered with a facility management consultancy company out of Virginia, who are very well established, and they helped us a lot, really learning curve. So even through that learning experience, which was still pre-masters, I was still very uncertain. And part of the commitment in terms of taking on that masters really just helped solidify what this career meant for me, and really looking at it as a career, looking at facility management as this area that I could grow in, and that I could bring what I already have, and maybe amplify that and see where it could propel me to even further. So there was a change for sure in that I knew I just had to make this work. I haven't made these
Right.
financial commitments, but even more so that, it really, really helped me become more focused, I would say, become more strategic in terms of
Mhm.
what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it.
Yeah, and you brought up an interesting point of having to do the masters remotely, and that is something where still today there's really not as many or nearly as many masters or even undergrad programs in facilities management as there needs to be. Do you foresee that changing? And even where you're located, are you seeing the popularity of facilities management increase?
Definitely. I could actually give real figures for this for us locally because I'm also involved in our local IFMA chapter. So the main focus for IFMA is education and in terms of grooming, the workforce of FM. And, when I started off in this chapter, that would be back in 2009. We would never see, say, a job vacancy advertising for a facility manager and actually asking for qualifications in facility management. You would always see something asking for an engineer or someone with a technical background. And possibly when you read the description, you'd notice, okay, that sounds like facility management, but never explicit. So what we are seeing now, and I would say maybe as far back as the last 3 years, or 3 years coming forward, that you would see that. And to me, it represents a maturity and awakening in terms of the business sector recognizing facility management as a profession and actually branding it as that because we're called so many different names. So I think that was one of the biggest things that we worked on as a chapter, just to try to, and it's still a work in progress, as you said, but just to try to make it uniform and really try to get the profession out there. And in terms of education, that remains one of our challenges, but we have done a lot of short courses and so sort of foundational courses through IFMA. And those help a lot. We've seen a lot of the, I guess, equivalent of community colleges taking on certification programs, and they would do, I would think, programs that can overlap. So they would do building engineering programs and stuff. But we are still working very feverishly on getting a hardcore, what I would call a hardcore facility management academic program established locally. But it's good, and as you mentioned, that through the virtual world that you could study and you could get that certification, you could get that accreditation. And that helps because then you get to bring back that knowledge and apply it to wherever you are.
Yeah, and that, I mean, with everyone being accustomed to working remotely now, it's no one's going to think twice about having a remote education, and that is going to be one of the perks of the last 14 months that we've adjusted to doing life virtually. You mentioned, and switching gears here, you mentioned earlier you going from a male dominated industry in engineering to another one in facilities. And on that note, and I've talked to several females in facilities management, and that along with just general education being two big, really agenda items there to broadcast what this is, get the education out there, but also have more diversity there. So talk to me about that. Tell me about your journey as a female in such a male-dominated industry, what that's like, and how you foresee that changing here in the near future.
Yeah, I believe that, we owe it to ourselves. Whatever you want to see in the industry you're in, you need to be part of that, right? And so if I would like to see more females joining this industry, then I need to do something about that. So to me, it ties into the whole, both education as well as awareness and advocacy, right? It all, to me, it's tied together. Because if we keep facility management this sort of like a secret, like no one really knows what it's about. The only image we have out there is maybe some, a male dominated technical thing that, doesn't seem attractive. And I would go beyond even a female stigma, even to a younger person, because that's another challenge we have in terms of the aging facility management. We old, right? Our profession, the average age is very old. And, all of it to me is tied together, because the only way we could fix that is, as you said, by diversifying. And how do you diversify? There needs to be some sort of very targeted awareness, and putting it out there, and targeted approach, in terms of changing it. So I don't expect it to change overnight or by the end of the year, or maybe even in 2 years. But I have seen over the years an increase, I guess, slightly, in terms of, once again, persons making the choice, it being females, right, making the choice in terms of coming on board and stuff. But I also think too that part of it as well is that we tend to hang on to the negative. Now, I don't want to trivialize the issues that persons face. For me, though, and maybe there's this old tradition of knocking on wood when you say something that you don't want it to happen, right? For me, though, I have not experienced any, say, prejudices, or, any sort of female attacks, so to speak, verbally, otherwise, because of me being in a male-dominated environment. But that does not mean it doesn't exist. So for the person out there who's experiencing stuff, I would say stick it through, try to build your little core, and through that be able to share and grow, because I see it, as I mentioned at the beginning, that it's on each of us to help grow this field. It's on each of us to correct any sort of, things we're seeing that we're not in agreement with. And, we're only going to do that if we tell our story. So opportunities like this to be able to come and talk and hopefully get it out there, get the message a bit further, is really what we need to be doing. Making it be very tangible and, as I said, very targeted and very purposeful about bringing in that diversity, bringing in younger persons, and just making the field of facility management being, more than just a hot topic. It's something lasting, and we want persons on board. We need persons on board, especially with everything going on in the world. I think the facility management manager is such a critical resource moving forward. We need more effort.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting here over the next couple of years, speaking to the younger generation getting more involved in facilities management, where technology is having it's becoming more and more relevant with facilities managers, from predictive and prescriptive maintenance to just tech platforms that are helping people in this position, to Internet of Things. I mean, technology is so it's infused in the industry, in your day-to-day lives, where as an industry, we need to get younger. We need to have people that have grown up with technology can utilize it to its fullest extent. So it's not and this is the big thing, is we got to get the stereotype that it is just some old guy turning a wrench. It is so much more than that.
Yes, it is so much more. And you're very right. It's a stereotype, it's a stigma, and we have to do better. So that's why, even going back a bit to the IFMA 40 under 40, I saw some persons kind of commenting on Facebook saying, was this necessary? But it is, because we need to encourage our young persons. We need them. We need to celebrate them, And the same way we celebrate long-standing, there's the long-standing service awards and all these things. Why not celebrate younger persons who've made a commitment, who've invested in their career, and they see it as something they'd like to spend some time in? And why not? Why? And all that is part of the encouragement that is needed, because everyone likes a little pat on their back now and then, in terms of knowing that, hey, good job, and continue on that path.
Yeah, certainly. And especially with facilities managers, where they largely go unnoticed. Unless something goes wrong, people aren't saying, hey, thanks for keeping the lights on today. It's just, you're taken for granted, unfortunately. And whenever someone is impacted negatively, it's like, okay, where's our facilities manager? I haven't talked to them in a while. So the encouragement and the recognition is certainly needed there.
Definitely. Yes, you're very right. They always celebrate the bad things. No one quite remember the 95%, of things going well, or the reason that everything works in your office is because there are people in the shadows just making it happen, and working extremely odd hours to get it done. But it's what we sign up for, No one is really in it for the glory. But we certainly see the potential in terms of, that it's needed. It's It's a necessity almost. It's essential to the organization and its own survival.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so, um, let's get a little technical here because I know
Sure.
that you wanted to talk about a couple topics that you're really passionate about. You referred to them before we hit the record button as your babies.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave it to you to go into just your view on facility condition assessments as well as the facility condition index and the value that they provide to your customers, to the organization and building as a whole.
Yeah, I'm very glad. So I'm like, how much time do we have? No, but I could break it down. So just to put it into context, the facility condition assessment to me, I found to be one of the most um, just wonderful tools in facility management because it allows the facility manager to look at the entire facility, the entire building, whatever you take care of, and get a status check, right? So we're able to capture what is our building looking like in this moment. And it goes beyond that. So not only just the status check, you're also able to measure your performance in terms of the building's performance. And if you were to really do this rigorously, the data that you get out of that allows you to, one, be able to forecast in terms of when next any major capital improvement projects, any major repairs need to be done. It helps you budget for that. It also helps you get to review your preventive maintenance programs. It helps you look at things like sustainability on a very broad spectrum and also granular, depending on what you want to do with it. And there are just so many different things that you could do with the facility condition assessment that for me, when I was introduced to this, maybe back in 2011 or so, just the concept of it, I just was like, wow, why isn't everyone doing this? And there's value also in terms of you, the person, this is my building, you going in there and doing those sort of walkthroughs, those sort of assessments. But there's also equal, if not greater value in bringing in an external party to be able to do the same. Because what tends to happen, we could be a bit complacent, because it's my building, I'm walking this every day. And so sometimes the little things we may miss, or we may push aside. And it's really good, even if it's someone else on your team who's on another facility, just bringing them on, say for one day to walk the building and be able to help you identify areas that need attention. It's very, very powerful, right? Because it helps us, which is one of the most important things you could do as a facility manager, which is to capture an issue before it becomes a big issue, right? So if you're able to stop that before it snowballs, before it becomes an emergency, before it becomes something catastrophic, then even if I don't get a pat on the back, it's a pat on the back because it's worth it. That's our whole job, right? We want to prevent these things from happening. And we want to ensure that your facility, your operations, your productivity always remains up, and it's we're able to add value to the organization like that. So that's the facility condition assessment in a very, I just, I guess, layman way. And out of that, a tool that can be used is the facility conditioning index, which takes the data that you would have had and allows you to work out this ratio. And out of this ratio, you're able to give an actual status to your building in terms of whether it's fair, it's good, it's poor. And that allows you as well to get a measure of in terms of how much deferred maintenance you have to do compared to the worth or the value of your building. So if you have a lot of things, because deferred maintenance just really refers to those things you've not quite gotten to. And it could be a very scary thing if we leave it and we just let it fester there, right? So if you have that's assigned a very huge value, right? Almost comparable to the worth of your building, we're in trouble. We're in real trouble. So what we always try to do is keep that ratio very low. So it gives a measure that we have very little deferred maintenance compared to the value of our facility. And so we're able with that now to also benchmark if we are part of, say, a campus of facilities, we have multiple buildings, we're able to benchmark, compare, and those are all very powerful because facility management goes beyond just the day-to-day maintenance. It's about tracking, it's about trending, it's about forecasting, right? And as I mentioned too, it's about prevention as well. as we look at the bigger picture. So, as I said, just a really wonderful tool that you can use. And, you need to be a facility manager for 20 plus years to be able to do this. There are a lot of standards, there are a lot of other additional information that you could use to help support. There are actually, as I mentioned, an ASTM standard for facility condition assessments, and gives you a really nice framework as to how you can do it, and then you could sort of tweak it and make something that becomes your own for your organization. So as I mentioned, just really really great. I love it, and I enjoy doing it for my clients just because of the value. I think it's able to give almost instantaneous value to them, because they're able to see exactly what's going on in this building and then able to plan to be able to address that. And to me, that's one of the best things I could do for anyone concerning their building.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned from the beginning that when you first were introduced to this concept, to this assessment, the index, that you had thought to yourself, why is everyone not doing this? Why are there people out there that are withholding this type of information, or just not going through that process? Why is that? I mean, do you find that to be pretty common still to this day, where people aren't going through this?
I think for now, presently, it's more about persons just maybe wanting to know how, and kind of getting a more structured approach to it. I think as a facility manager, you do a subset of it because we walk our buildings, we check things. That's what we do naturally, but it's the documentation side, which no one likes. No one likes to do reports, and not just do a report, actually do analysis and all of that. Nobody likes that. So I think that may be one of the reasons, people may shy away from it in the industry. But, it's you can't differentiate the two. Why are we, monitoring and taking care of a facility if we don't have the science behind that? If we don't know, we can't track how regularly we've maintained something. We don't have on record, when this piece of equipment was last changed out, or when we did a major retrofit. If we don't have that type of information, then we're really going into blind every time, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So as I mentioned, even if it's not you in terms of you wanting to do it, or if you need help, there's a lot of information online, and then there are persons like me who come into your building and could do it for you. So there are a lot of people like me in that regard. But it's worth still, as a facility manager, not that I'm talking myself out of business, but every facility manager to me should be doing some sort of condensed version of this on their buildings, at least I would say once a year, to get that bigger picture, because we tend to always be out in these fires, right? And we mentioned it's only when there's an emergency or something going wrong. But sometimes those events take up so much of our time. We really do an injustice to ourselves, because we don't give ourselves the time to plan, the time to, as I said, really apply the science to this industry, which would really help us to go that much further. So yeah, I think it's a combination of many different things, but I've seen a lot of webinars and information. There are white papers and all these things that are out around facility condition assessment, because it's not a new thing. But as I said, is once again, just making it very easy and very simple in terms of how a facility manager could understand it and how they could do it.
And are there specific KPIs that you're reporting on during these assessments?
Yeah, so what we do is basically the building systems. So you break it down, you break down your building very, like almost an elemental analysis. So you look at structure, you look at mechanical, and within mechanical you'll have your HVAC and all these things, electrical, and you really break it down into these subsets. And then you could use several things. So when it comes to the actual equipment, you may look at the useful life and the expected useful life for this piece of equipment. So that helps you measure, okay, it's in the next 5 years, we need to start thinking about changing out our cooling towers or our chillers or whatever. So that is actually something you benchmark against, something that's actual data that you need to source to be able to make those sort of comparisons. You also could use codes in terms of your building codes and all these standards, because a lot of your building systems need to comply with these codes. So it's also that opportunity to look at that compliance factor as well, especially for health and safety stuff. In the midst of COVID-19, there was this whole new resurgence on oh gosh, what is on your ventilation, right? And air quality, there was all about how do we get more fresh air into the buildings and all these things. So once again, do you know how much fresh air is coming into your building? How would you know if it's not being measured, it's not being tracked? So, there are standard, I would say, KPIs in terms of the building, the building codes, the standards, the useful life and stuff like that. But you could also, for your building, if you have some set KPIs in terms of, say, how long you would want a certain piece of equipment, or say, even with your finishes, there are companies who also establish every 10 years we change out our carpets, and stuff like, oh, we want to get rid of carpets completely because it's not good, so those are the sort of things you could use the condition assessment for to help you maybe phase those sort of projects. If you want to retrofit the type of lights you have, to get more energy saving equipment in there, all these things could be used. So it's a lot of both low hanging fruit as well as, things we kind of need to work towards and plan and prep and build a budget around as well.
And you mentioned on minimum, you should be doing it once a year.
Yeah, for sure.
What's best practice? Are you talking quarterly, twice a year? How frequently would you recommend that?
Yeah, I think you don't want overkill because remember, we're trying to stay away also from the becoming complacent, right? So this is you talking doing your entire building. So it's going to take some time, right? And therefore, I think for me, I would suggest once a year and you plan for that. You get your team involved and you have your template, you have your checklist, you have those KPIs that you mentioned, what we're looking for, you have your specific data that you're trying to capture. And because we also need to know what we want out of this. So I'll give you an example for one of my clients, they wanted out of their facility condition assessment, outside of the typical, how's my AC performing, how's my energy and stuff like that. They also wanted to know, are we in a position to become LEED certified? So what's my readiness like? So for us, we use the LEED checklist as another input into the facility condition assessment, which wouldn't be a norm, but we already work in the building. We're already going through all the systems there, so why not? Why not also use it? And persons have used it also. We had another client ask us to assess their accessibility, right, against the ADA standard, and stuff like that. So, you could do so much because you're taking the time to walk through your building. And, you could use it to test your sustainability level. You could also use it to test whether certain processes and protocols that you put in place is really working. People really implementing these things, So, as I said, just really, really a wonderful tool to get that bigger picture, yes, but also get granular information that can help you tweak, that can help you strategize, and also help you budget along the way.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And Giselle, I certainly appreciate the context and the insights into those topics there. And before I let you go, I ask this to everybody, and this is my favorite question. But who or what has had the biggest impact on you in your career?
What's a question? Who or what? There've just been so many people. I can't name names. I think, and I'll just tell you why. On a personal level, it'd have to be my parents, all right? Because they're just wonderful and so supportive, and they're everything. In a work level, professional level, I've been blessed in having so many role models, persons who, if ever I'm confused about something, I want clarity about something, I could just, send a WhatsApp, I could call, I could shoot a message, and I know I'm going to get a response. And, these are who I consider like the FM gurus, they're big, they're big in the FM world. And, just seeing how they operate and how they're always so willing to listen and willing to give advice and stuff. To me, that is just wonderful. So I have not answered your question, but I have given you that is my perspective, because there's just so many moving parts, and I think because I still consider myself young in the field. So I know there are going to be so much more people as well along the way. So I'm just grateful for all of them and the parts that they play in my life, professionally and personally.
Yeah, I think that the key point there is that you need a mentor getting into the industry and then continuing. Yeah. I mean, you just were awarded 40 under 40 through the most well-known organization in facilities management, and yet you are falling back on and asking for help from people still to this day. And so that is, a big takeaway there. Get a mentor, get many mentors, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Definitely. Ask the silly questions because there are no silly answers. Trust me.
Well, Giselle, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing your story and your insights. And like I said, thank you for the time, and looking forward to staying in touch with you.
Same here, Griffin. Thanks very much.
Take care. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes and visit our website, stratumcommunity.com, for more facilities management content.